countries of ALBA-TCP. They have used the pandemic to prevent Venezuela to purchase medicine, vaccines, freezing their accounts abroad. These measures are therefore the main responsible of the death of people and given the way the pandemic has been managed in Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba, these measures have not had the result they expected regarding the pandemic. But however, the UCM goes beyond this analysis. A few days ago, Pope Francis condemned the use of these illegal and immoral practices. And also, it has to do with the nature and the character of those applying the measures, because not only they are against the international law, but a state committing these illegalities, it's an unlawful act, and trying to generate collective harm, mindful that they represent crimes against humanity. Those states cannot be considered a democracy, not only because they are against the principles or the tenets of the international, the Charter of the United Nations, but they are trying to only control natural resources and try to punish those who are against their desires. The implementation of these UCMs violate social, cultural, political rights, the right to peace and the right to development, and they represent, as I said before, a crime against humanity. And finally, there is a warning. We need to be ready because the US and some allies want to securitize the fight against climate change. They're going to use an excuse for invasions. The application or not of the Paris Agreement will be used as a tool for them to impose the global agenda. Namely, we need to prevent them to use climate change as an excuse so United States and other countries use this situation to continue their attacks against international law. Again, I would like to greet all those participating in this academic event, to greet the authorities, the scholars who are accompanying us during this seminar, and wish you success in your deliberations. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Secretary General of ALBA-TCP for his address and his thoughtful words. Now I'm going to give the floor to Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Mr. Molina. Rubén Darío Molina has the floor. No estamos escuchando. We cannot get the voice of the Vice Minister. Not get him. His microphone is muted, I think. So I had to change my microphone. Again, good morning to all of you who have joined us. Greetings to Dr. Guillermo, who's moderating this seminar of the ALBA-TCP from the cradle of the Simon Bolivar, Caracas, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We send greetings to all of you.
Es muy oportuno, como sabemos, de que nuestros decisores dentro del ALBA-TCP
It is very
hayan
timely that
mandado estas
the
actividades que son previas
ALBA-TCP
a lo
had
que es
organized this
Convención de las
meeting
Partes
ahead of the
sobre cambio
COP26
climático.
meeting
Se va a
on climate
realizar
change
a
that
partir
will
de la
take
semana que
place
viene en Reino Unido.
next week in the United Kingdom.
Tenemos el mandato del ALBA.
We have the mandate of ALBA.
El grupo que es el ALBA
We
TCP
have
en sí.
the ALBA-TCP as a group,
Tenemos que seguir construyendo las
and
acciones
we
para
need to
luchar
continue
contra el cambio
building
climático.
actions to fight
Para llegar a
climate
esa
change,
meta de lo que
to
fue
reach
lo que nos dimos los gobiernos
the
en
goals
París en el año 2015, con
that
el
we
denominado
agreed
Acuerdo de París.
in
Y
the Paris
tenemos
Agreement.
la
We need
obligación
to work together.
dentro de los mandatos y de
And
las acciones de incorporar los
we
movimientos
need
sociales, las
also to
organizaciones
associate
sociales,
grassroots
todas,
organizations
la
in
de
this
adultos
endeavor,
mayores, la de jóvenes,
women, elderly
toda
people,
la de
youth,
diferentes
the
comunidades,
various
laicos,
communities,
por supuesto,
cultural
las que vienen
groupings,
trabajando de hace muchos
and all
años
of those who
lo
have been
que es
working for a long time
tema
to
que
address
nos mueve en estos momentos
the
como es
topic of
el calentamiento global
global warming
y todas sus
and
consecuencias
climate
para la vida
change
cotidiana
and the
de todos
consequences
nosotros.
for our daily life.
Estamos hablando también dentro de este ámbito, dentro de este mandato y dentro de este impacto de las medidas
Within
positivas
this
unilaterales en la implementación
mandate
del Acuerdo de París y en
and
el derecho al desarrollo sustentable
based
de los
on the
países
topic of
con
this
sus
conference
elementos esenciales
on
para la
how to
convención
address
sobre
Paris
crecimiento.
Agreement
Estamos hablando del
despite
multilateralismo
the
inclusivo.
UCM. We are talking
Creo
about
que en el año
inclusive
2015 en
multilateralism.
Copenhague
In
trataron de
2015
burlarnos
in Copenhagen,
de,
they tried
de,
to trick us.
de los países en vía de desarrollo, de algunos países en vía de desarrollo, de los
Some
países
developing
desarrollados, sin
countries
imponerlo.
and
Miren,
some
uno de los
undeveloped
temas en el
countries
mundo
try to
sobre
impose
cambio climático
their
y sus
vision
metas
on
de
climate change,
acalentamiento en los
their
calentamiento global.
target on global
Anteriormente se
warming.
le llamó en gran parte o comenzó a denominarse la llamada también economía,
And
economía verde, ¿no? Entonces en aquel momento
what they
estábamos
call
hablando de un
green economy.
multilateralismo
And at that time, we raised the issue of
exclusivo. No
exclusive
llegaban a ser 50 estados, pero ya casi se había
multilateralism.
abordado
Almost less than
esa
50
meta para
states
aquel entonces,
have
o lo que
already
pretendían
agreed some of those
los
goals
países
that
miembros de
they
Naciones
then
Unidas en esa
pretended to
convención.
impose
Aprobamos
on
lo
the rest
que
of the members of the
aprobamos.
UN.
Se impuso el
In
multilateralismo
the end,
inclusivo.
the
Recordemos a nuestro
inclusive
comandante, el
multilateralism
presidente Chávez,
imposed
en
itself.
ese momento de
And we
Copenhague.
remember Hugo Chavez
Recordemos
in
el posicionamiento de
Copenhagen.
Evo Morales,
We remember
pero también
the
recordemos
position
las
of Evo,
actuaciones del ALBA.
but also
El
we have to remember
ALBA-TCP. Y
ALBA-TCP at that
el
time
ALBA-TCP ha sido una
rise
referencia muy
to this
importante a lo
challenge.
largo
And since
de la
ALBA-TCP has been a
de las
reference
negociaciones de cambio
within
climático
the,
y sus
the
sucesivas
negotiations of climate change
conferencias
and
de las
the
partes
other
hasta llegar a
COPs
esta 26 ahorita.
up
Así
to
que la
the
pelea sigue
coming
siendo por el
COP26.
multilateralismo,
So the battle continues to
inclusivo
be
versus el
inclusive multilateralism
exclusivo
against
y el
exclusive multilateralism
unilateralismo.
and
Por
against
eso saludamos este
unilateralism.
evento,
Therefore, we
saludamos,
greet
Guillermo, a lo mejor te voy a
this
quitar
event
parte de la presentación, pero te pido disculpas de adelantado. Y vamos a tener
and we
aquí
are going to have
ponentes de una talla importante,
important
pero además
speakers
con
today,
las características de que nos van a nutrir.
and they're going
Tenemos
to
esto de
give
cambio
us
climático, o por lo
lights
menos
on
orientarla
what do we
dentro
mean
del
by
cambio
climate
climático y dentro de
change
las medidas coercitivas unilaterales
and
y
what we
cómo
mean
hacen
by
su
UCMs
énfasis
and
en
how
los pueblos, ¿no?
they
Vamos
affect
a
the
tener
peoples.
de Bolivia a
From
Diego Pacheco,
Bolivia, Diego
que
Pacheco,
expondrá,
who's
fíjense
going
bien
to
este
talk.
título,
And so just look at this
crisis
title,
climática,
Climate Crisis, New
mundial y impacto
Colonization
negativo de las
and
medidas
Negative Impact of
coercitivas.
UCMs.
La embajadora Claudia Salerno, saludó
Claudia
a la
Salerno,
embajadora,
our ambassador, greetings to you.
con una, en su momento,
For 7 years, she headed the negotiations on climate change. She's going to talk about ecological transition, green capitalism, or eco-socialism. And also, Ramon Teach is going to talk about the US blockade as a main impediment to the social economic development of Cuba and the actions taken by Cuba against climate change. This is the mandate of our decision-making leaders. We are fulfilling our commitment and respecting our positions regarding climate change in the framework of the COP process. We are accompanying the organized people to defend the Pachamama, the Mother Earth. Therefore, we are on the right path to try to make sure in an inclusive manner that the voices of the peoples, in the developing country have the impact on the decisions that will be made within a framework of inclusive multilateralism in anything that have to do with this discussion and within the discussions of the ALBA-TCP. Thank you very much, Rubén Darío.
Thank you very much, Rubén Darío. And well, yes, you said so many of the things I wanted to say, but it is important that we need to reiterate what our Vice Minister has just said. We need to take into consideration what happened in Copenhagen and remember two very important things. The first was the pretension of the so-called developed countries, particularly the United States and the European Union, their intention to impose a document and violate all norms of the debate and to violate, in most of all, multilateralism. And that happened there in a very open manner. It was there for all to see. But another important thing is ALBA stance back then. That stance made it possible for precluding the adoption of that document. So we can oppose those unilateral pretensions as we did it in Copenhagen. Today, the attack against multilateralism and against the people's rights to make their own decisions and to have their voice at the negotiation table is once again intensifying, particularly by the United States and its allies. So our role is, first of all, to denounce the illegal and unilateral measures they take that violate the international law, the UN Charter, all norms of coexistence. We need to oppose those intentions, but we also need to act so that we can conquest our rights of being an equal member of all the countries of the international scene. So this is the purpose of this meeting, to show how they want to impose those illegal actions and how this pretension harms the country's abilities to honor their commitments after debates and meetings on multilateralism, and how we can define a common stance so that the multilateral system is not destroyed. Our Vice Minister already talked about this, but he introduced our panelists, and I'm going to introduce the first one of them. It's Diego Pacheco. He's an anthropologist. He has a master's degree in environmental affairs in the United Kingdom. He has a PhD from the Indiana University of the United States, and he has occupied several posts as a official state in the oil industry and environmental industry in the plurinational state of Bolivia. He was twice a deputy minister of planification and coordination, and he participated in the creation of the environment regulations of Bolivia. He was the chief and co-chief of the Bolivian delegation from 2011 to 2016 to the UNFCCC and also in the Biodiversity Convention. He occupies